Welcome to the Black Doctor Collective podcast. We as Black doctors are in a unique position. We can change our communities, healthcare, and the world. Of course, we start by changing the way we see and value ourselves. I'm your host, Dr. Shanika Horn, pediatrician and physician coach, travel extraordinaire. I am so happy to have you here and listening. So let's get into it. Hi, I am excited. So I'm out of office this week. If you're watching the YouTube and you're looking at my house, it's because we pre-recorded. So I am traveling for 2 weeks for my birthday. First week is Grenada. Second week is in St. Vincent. By the time you're listening to this, I will already be in St. Vincent. While in Grenada, I let my school know that I'm going to come to visit campus. I haven't been there in a long time. And so they asked me to speak to the Black medical students. And I asked them in return, what do they want me to talk about? Because there are just so many things that we could talk about when it comes to medicine, med school. I get the concept of wanting to hear back from a Black physician who has made it, quote unquote, arrival fallacy. We talked about that last week with Dr. Trott. But arrival fallacy and, having questions and things like that. But I also want to be very cognizant about where they are, like in terms of mindset, mind frame, because it's totally different now that I'm an attending. Oh, so much has changed about me and about what I know. And there's just like a lot of learning and a lot of growing in a short span of time. So I was sitting around thinking about what do I need to say to these people? I mean, thinking back, and I have to say way back, because it has been 10 years, 11 years since I left the island of Grenada after completing basic science, and we migrated to New York for clinical rotations. So it feels like forever and a million transitions ago, from island life back to the US to our core clinical rotations, which are totally different from our elective rotations, transitioning to residency. And every year of residency is like its own thing, its own discovery period, right? To fellowship. And my fellowship was global health. So I was rotating between sites. So between, Navajo Nation in Arizona to Liberia to technically off reservation in New Mexico, but same population, different hospital, transitioning to being an attending. And then with locums, I'm transitioning all the time in different settings, different communities, different patient populations. So it feels like a real throwback to think about what was I in need of in my first 2 years of basic sciences. Do y'all remember what y'all were thinking about going back into time when you guys were in basic science classes? I feel like it was all about just trying to digest an exorbitant amount of information in a very short span of time, followed by resource overload. So information overload, then resource overload, because we were trying to find the best study guides, the best tools, all the hacks, trying to learn everything so fast in a catchy way. I remember looking up things, on the internet, just trying to figure out a way to consume so much information. And I always said, if medicine was taught in song, I would know everything. Because the way I know songs from 1995 that I haven't heard in 15 years, and I still know everything from the chorus to the hook to the ad-libs, baby, my brain is programmed for music. So medicine should be taught as music. I saw a cute video the other day with a guy who did the bones. And I was like, see, if anatomy was taught in rap, I would have that joined down. But I don't remember the Krebs cycle or any of the other cycles that we learned. I don't care how many times I went over that thing. It felt like starting over every single time. Like, why all the enzymes? Why did we need to know that? What was the purpose And then on top of that, there was UWorld and QBanks, study guides, and YouTube videos, mnemonics. Oh, do y'all remember Picmonic? I wonder if they're still in business. It was a cartoon company that made basically picture images of various conditions, especially for like bacteria or virology. So if it was like Campylobacter, it'd be like a picture of puppy pooing on a camp at a campsite with like it was just like a visual way to remember random things. And I also used a lot of office supplies. I remember a lot of office supplies. So many highlighters, so many gel pens. I had like the Stedlers because I was trying to be bougie, and it was like all the multicolored pens, and you would write your notes in all the multicolors. Did it help me memorize anything? I'm not sure that it actually did, but it was pretty and it brought me joy, especially since I was sitting there for 50 million hours. Flashcards. I knew I was in a different world when I was outside of the study hall. I remember getting up one evening. I had been sitting upstairs in the second floor of our study hall at one of these big tables. We had a group study hall called not Charter. Charter was our lecture. Taylor. We had a huge group study hall in the second floor of Taylor, and it was these large tables I could seat. They would put them two together, so it could seat anywhere from like, I don't know, 6 to 10 people easily. And everyone would pile into Taylor, and you would sit at your tables and you would pull out your laptop and all of your stuff. And there was one day I needed to take a break. So I went downstairs out to the front of Taylor because we're in Grenada, so it's warm. So it's nice to still step outside, get some fresh air, catch an ocean breeze. We were right on the coast. And there were people taking cigarette breaks with flashcards. First of all, fire hazard. But second of all, dang, the fact that you can't even take a break without taking study material, I just knew med school was something different. So yes, I just remember lots of studying, lots of questions, endless office supplies, all to try and stave off potential failure. Everyone just fighting to survive. And if there was a failure, right? Like I remember I did not pass my biochemistry the first time and I had to repeat the class, something that people do not know. But now I can talk about it because I'm a successful doctor. But at the time, very big secret. But when there was failures, people did not know. Unless it was one of those things where like everyone knew kind of, but no one talked to that person about it. We just talked around that person. So it was never done in a way that was helpful or supportive, but more like avoiding contagion, as if you could catch failure by being around this person that had not done a good time. And people would judge those people, right? Like, oh, I saw them at the club. Our club was called Bananas. I saw them at Bananas. That's why they didn't pass, blah, blah, blah. But really, it was just like survival. Just everyone trying to, crabs in a barrel almost, right? Everyone just trying to survive, trying to figure out what they needed to do to not fail, to not be, it felt like at the time, not be publicly embarrassed. So that is, the negative parts of med school, right? The stress, the tension, the overwhelm. So in order to try to figure out, okay, well, what am I going to talk about? I started looking through some old pictures. If anyone knows me, y'all know I take a lot of pictures. I always have. I probably always will, much to the chagrin of some of my closest people. But I am glad because now I was able to dig back through my very organized photo piles. Y'all, my photos have been organized by date and event since like 2002, okay? Since college. And so I went back through and I started looking at all the things I decided to capture by imagery. And the thing that stood out for me was that I say this a lot actually, and I just started to realize it's not true. I often say that I lost myself somewhere. And I have this moment in my mind where I think back to fellowship where I was so anxious about practicing in the pandemic and what that would mean and how to do it, and like just overwhelmed with anxiety in a way I had never felt before. And I didn't feel like I could ask for things. I felt like I had lost my voice. I felt powerless. And I shifted and was able to ask for what I wanted. And I think you guys, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know that story. And if you haven't, please go back and listen to that story. It's really good. But I realize I've always been that person that does something differently or does something that other people think is courageous. Like the simple fact that all of us, everyone who went to a Caribbean medical school or any medical school really, especially ones that were out of town, picked up, moved to wherever. Like for us, I moved to Grenada, and I had never been to Grenada before. I'd been to the Caribbean, so I kind of had that as a reference point, but I'd never been to Grenada. I moved to a country with people I don't know for the first time to attend a program and do schooling in a way that I had never done before. And obviously, in hindsight, I think it's clearer how much of a big deal that is because I didn't know quite what I was getting into. But I think I always had courage. And I want to highlight this because I had this conversation with a lot of doctors who we often feel like we've lost ourselves and that we have kind of trailed off the path of who we used to be and that we used to be these courageous people and now we aren't. But I think, for those of us, especially if you guys are here and you're listening to the podcast and you're interested in negotiating and navigating your workplace and figuring out better options for yourself, I want to say it's because you have that courageous characteristic in you. And you've probably had that all along, right? Because it takes some kind of, besides the sadism, it takes some kind of gusto, some kind of courage to go through what we went through. All those transitions I just mentioned, from the beginning of school all the way to where we are now, we're not actually entirely different people. We are that person that took the leap. We are that person that did it in spite of. So many of us were told we couldn't do it, we wouldn't make it wasn't going to happen for us. And we did it anyway. And a lot of us did it with some attitude. Like, I think I did it with flair. I was like, oh, y'all think I'm not going to be able to do it? Bet. I'm going to go to this Caribbean school. I'm going to do it. And I'm going to not do it the way you tell me I have to. I'm going to do it my way, right? Which involved a lot of global health work, integrating my passions into what I was doing, taking on a lot of extracurriculars. So I was, a vice president for a student government when I was on the island. I was in a lot of clubs. I learned how to scuba dive. I was living my best life. And so I just think it's funny that you think of medicine as all consuming, but I found balance even as a medical student. I fought for balance even as a medical student, and I continue to fight for balance now. So I mentioned I'm, going on this birthday trip, and my version of balance looks very different from other people's. My version of balance this year anyway involves going on a vacation every month, much like I always say, to the chagrin of somebody. In this case, it's the chagrin of my current clinic. And I have told them this is my vacation schedule. Obviously my work is really good. So when I'm in clinic, I'm not even going to be humble about it. I'm a damn good doctor. The patients love me. And so I'm an asset on the team. And for me to be that asset and to show up happily in my full energy, in honesty, because I don't know no other way, I got to take vacation. I have to water myself. I have to self-care and pour into my cup and all the euphemisms that people say when they're doing the things that they need to do in order to maintain. So looping it back, this talk that I'm giving just really made me realize that I have always found ways to fill my cup. Sometimes we forget that. I encourage you to go back through your own photos, through your own journals. I use planners a lot. So that's also sometimes really helpful to go back through a planner and see the kinds of things that I was doing. How did I spend my weekends? How did I spend my free time? We used to love a post-exam celebration, whether it was a catamaran around the island, some kind of festival, some kind of trip, partying, especially the night after finals were done. That was a big party night, that Friday night. There was just a lot of things that we were doing to try to find balance. And so that's one of the themes of the talk is don't lose yourself, right? And don't let medicine consume you. And also do it the way you want to do it and the way that feels good to you. It's really about doing the things that people say you can't or shouldn't, or not doing the things people say you have to. People love to tell you what you have to do. You have to do it this way. You have to do X, Y, and Z. And then you don't, and you're fine. Like life goes on. I really want to encourage you guys, as well as these students, to find your own voice, remember who you've always been, and use that to propel you forward. So, what is it you want to achieve next? What are some things that you want to be doing? That how do you want your job to look? And medicine has a funny way of keeping you in the present. In medical school, we didn't have time to think about what we wanted to be as an attending necessarily. We hadn't even chosen maybe our specialty yet, especially in basic science. It was always about just taking the next step. I joke all the time and say that medicine is a series of uninformed decisions. And so when I think about that, it's literally, I was just judging the next best thing, not having the big picture. I didn't even know how many step exams. I say that all the time. I don't even know how many exams there were required for licensing in medicine when I started. I just started. And so I think that's part of the self-preservation that allows us not to be completely consumed or overwhelmed by things in a way that now as an attending, we just have a general or a larger view and it can overwhelm us. What's the next best thing that's going to happen in your life? For me, I started with, I'm going to move to a 4-day work week, no weekends. Okay, great. And I signed up for jobs that didn't require 24-hour calls. So that was like, okay, I'm not going to work 24 hours. That's too much for me. I really want to reclaim my weekends after, 4 years of med school, 3 years of residency, 2 years of fellowship. So 9 years of not having full control of my weekends. That was something that was important to me. And that's where I started 4-day work weeks. And then I moved to 3-day work weeks. And now I do 2-day work weeks. And I started increasing my vacation time. So it's all gradual. It wasn't something that I did at one time. I didn't come out of training and said, I'm going to work 2 days a week and take vacations every month. First of all, no, you need a financial plan for that. But if you can make it work, if you can figure it out, then do it. Don't listen to me who's telling you that you can't, because I didn't and didn't see a way to do it. Do whatever you need to do, how you need to do it. But for me, that was the gradual transition in creating this career that feels sustainable, that I can still show up to energetically. I talk sometimes about the day-to-day of it, the fighting, the negotiating, the bargaining that has to be done in order to really maintain boundaries, in order to live this kind of life. And honestly, it's all worth it for weeks like this, times like this, where I can take off all of this time that I want to take. I mean, eventually I'll be rich and I can vacation indefinitely, but that's not now. But I can take 2 weeks for my birthday, which is a big deal. I can have all my weekends. I can work 2 to 3 days a week. Some weeks I do work 4 based on their need, and that's up to me. But the flexibility to do that, the option to say no, I always say it's so much easier to opt into something. It's easier for me to say, I will work 2 days a week, and then every other day that I give to the clinic is a bonus, right? Because you can't commit to 4 days and then try to switch back. They don't like that. And usually it's in the contract. So I always say when you write your contract, you want to almost start with a minimum and then you can increase or be flexible. And it really changes the view of how people see you. So the clinic is thinking that I'm being very generous and accommodating by adding hours, committing to more hours. And in truth, I am, because I really don't have to do those hours. But also, that flexibility to work more or less is so priceless, because now I can take time off. I can, travel as I wish, spend time with my family. And that's the stuff I remember. When I think back to medical school, I remember the time frames in what I was doing. Where did I go? What fun things did we have? I took the opportunity to take 2 away electives in medical school. One was to Kenya as a first termer, which actually the program was for second termers only, and I still applied and I got in because I hadn't even taken the class. I hadn't taken parasitology yet, and that was the elective. I was always bold, I'm telling you. I went to Kenya on this parasitology elective for a class I did not take. I did not know the professor. I still submitted my application. And then I went to Thailand, and Thailand was a, complementary medicine. How do you fuse Western medicine with traditional Chinese medicine and other holistic forms of healthcare? So those are the things I remember about medical school. I remember my time in student government. I remember my time as a vice president. I remember the clubs. I remember the outreach. I remember hosting, we used to have a midterm party called Sandblast, where everybody went to the beach and we would serve beer and there were games and people would just hang out and half the campus would be there. I remember hosting Sandblast, arranging that, getting artists to come and perform, talking about security planning. I've always been a planner, as you can tell from my 2002 to now photo album that's well organized. But those are things that I loved, right? Being that student government person for so many other students. That's what I remember. I remember all the times I hosted Thanksgiving dinner in my apartment off campus, which I did it twice. Thanksgiving, having that option to celebrate it was really a Friendsgiving, but celebrate, right? Those are the memories that I have. I don't remember every day that I sat in class. I remember the general feeling of sitting in class. I remember falling asleep in class. But if I had not stopped to create memories of learning how to scuba dive and all of these other fun things, my journey would have been different. I also think that I would have had burnout much faster than I did. These are the things that create balance for you, especially because being in med school, you really can't go to every event that you used to go to. And I used to go to everything, everyone's wedding, everyone's party, every trip to Trinidad Carnival. I was living a good life before med school because I had a full-time job and I was already making 80K. So as a 20 something. So I was making money. I didn't have any responsibilities other than my rent and cable and internet. And so I was everywhere doing all the things with all of my friends. So knowing that I loved to live the life of celebration and that I valued friendship and good times, how did I interweave that into my medical school experience? And it was through these opportunities for electives, for on-campus groups. So that's the story that I'm going to talk to them about. So there's a double theme, which is the do what you want, how you want. And then also don't let anybody tell you that you can't, in order to create balance for yourself. So that's my message for them. It's also my message for you. If you are looking to create balance for yourself, if you are looking to revamp how you've been doing medicine, if you do feel like you lost yourself, because I really do feel like I went through that period of loss. If you do feel like you lost yourself and you're thinking back to the girl, the man, the person, the boy you used to be, and how that person felt more audacious, more courageous, more bold than who you are now, then I would say reach out to me. Let's get you living that bold life again. You have more money now, so your life should be better. right? They say money doesn't buy you happiness, but money is paying for this vacation, and this vacation is making me happy. So the concept of going through all of this training in order to earn money that I do not get to enjoy will never sit right with me. I have to enjoy it. So that's what I want for you guys. I would love to hear, who you were back then. What were some of the fun, crazy things you did while in medical school? And how you want to incorporate them into your life now. Okay, that's it. Keeping it brief this week. Enjoy your week. I definitely will be enjoying mine. Talk to you next week. Bye. Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe to the podcast. And what I want you to do next is link us everywhere you can. Instagram at The Black Doctor. Just become part of our collective. I want you here. Thanks. Until next time. Bye.